Hello, everyone. Welcome to the information session about the Visiting Artist Fellowship at Harvard University's Mittal Institute. We're going to take a few seconds to let all our participants in, and then we will get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are waiting to let everybody in to this information session. The information session is about the Visiting Artist Fellowship. We will be starting in about 5 seconds. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening in South Asia and good morning if you're in the US. Welcome to today's event, hosted by the Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute at Harvard University. The mission of the Institute is to engage through interdisciplinary research to advance and deepen the understanding of critical issues relevant to South Asia and its relationship with the world. My name is Sneha Shrestha, and I am the Arts Program Manager at the Mittal Institute. The Arts Program is generously supported by our Arts Council. I've worked in this capacity for almost 6 to 7 years, and it has been wonderful to see the program expand over the years, and it's always a pleasure getting to work with fellow South Asian artists. In today's session, I will be talking about the Visiting Artist Fellowship, what the program is, who it is for, how to apply for it, and what to expect. We will also get the opportunity at the end to hear from one of our Visiting Artist Fellows who actually just completed the program and is back home in his home country. We will be welcoming Saurav Kimire. Saurav, do you want to say hi real quick? There you go. Thanks for being here with us, Saurav. We'll talk to you at the end of the program and ask you some questions. Okay, and at the end, you will also have the opportunity to ask me questions. Just put your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and we will answer your questions in the order it was received. Okay, so let's begin. So the Visiting Artist Fellowship is a unique opportunity for mid-career visual artists from around South Asia to spend 8 weeks on Harvard campus to conduct research that will further inform their art practice. The VF differs from a typical artist residency. It's not a typical artist residency because the program is research-centered, providing artists with the vast resources of Harvard's intellectual community to enhance their artistic practice. The Visiting Artist Fellowship provides a few things. So if you get selected, artists get a stipend of $8,000 for the 8-week duration of the program to cover all costs incurred during the fellowship at the Mittal Institute. You also receive a round-trip economy travel ticket from South Asia to Cambridge. You will also receive an orientation to the campus in the first week of the Artist Fellowship, a shared office space at the Mittal Institute, and an opportunity to attend classes on campus pending individual faculty approval. So let's talk about things that the Artist Fellowship does not provide or does not guarantee. Because this is not a typical artist residency, we do not provide studio space or art supplies, and we also cannot guarantee faculty approval for classes or meetings. You will also be responsible for your own housing once you get here. Let's talk about eligibility. Who can apply for this fellowship? So artists who are current residents of South Asia, so you should be working and living in South Asia. By South Asia, we mean countries including Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Pakistan, Maldives, and Sri Lanka. So if you live and work in one of these countries and you're an artist, you are eligible to apply. You should also be a mid-career artist with an established body of work. You are actively exhibiting current works in professional artistic venues such as galleries or museums. You should also be able to provide a plan and rationale for utilizing Harvard's resources, including specific classes, archives, libraries, or museum collections. You should have a valid passport, obviously, and be able to apply for the necessary visa. Shortlisted candidates will also be required to participate in a video interview with the review committee. So once you are at the VF, we have a few program requirements. One is an artist talk or a seminar on campus, a display of the artist's work at the Mittal Institute. On the right, you see an image of Mehuish, one of our visiting artist fellowships, speaking about her work at her exhibit at our office. You will also submit a 4 to 5 page report at the end of the fellowship, covering what was accomplished during the fellowship. And there will also be an exit interview at the end. Okay, let's talk about what is in the application, what you're going to need to complete your application. The first one is a resume or a CV. The second one is an artist statement. We'd like to know what your art is about, what is your process in that artist statement. And then we also ask you to submit a portfolio of no more than 15 images. So 15 images is the maximum number of images that we will be looking at. The next one is the fellowship proposal. In the fellowship proposal, we'd love for you to answer a few questions. And this information is also available on our website. We'll be posting the link on our chat. Fellowship proposal. So there are three major things that we'd love for you to include in your fellowship proposal. We would like to know how you're going to utilize the 8 weeks of your time at Harvard to further inform your work. What resources at Harvard do you plan to use? How do you use your work to draw attention to the areas of social issues of your particular context of South Asia? So make sure to cover these parts in the fellowship proposal of how you'd like to spend your time at Harvard. We also require 2 letters of recommendation. So helpful tips that I have found helpful to share with everybody in my 7 years, which, these feel pretty basic, but it's worth reminding everybody about these because it's so important. So the first one is submit your application ahead of time so that you have time to ask your questions. If you have technical difficulties, if you have questions about, anything at all, before the deadline is the time to ask the questions, right? And the application will also take some time to figure out the answers or your proposal for your application. So please start ahead of time. The deadline is January 2nd. I'll be talking about deadlines in the next slide, but I would say please start your applications ahead of time and submit ahead of time as well. The second thing that I would consider an important tip is recommendation letters. Make sure that your recommendation letters are submitted on time. It is the artist's responsibility to make sure you get in touch with the people you're requesting as recommenders to send in their recommendation letters on time. So on the chat here, you can see the application details on the website as well. So let's look at the application timeline. Our application opened on November 25th. And the application deadline is January 2nd. So you have about 3 weeks or so to get your application together. If you're just learning about the fellowship here, we would recommend you start immediately. Go to the website, look at the questions, and start the process. You can ask any questions that you would like. I'm going to post my email address at the end of the slide, where you'll be able to directly email me about questions that you have. Decisions will be made at the end of April next year, and the VF fall session will begin April 20th to November 15th, and then the spring session in 2026 will begin February 20 to March 15th. So we are selecting artists for both of these semesters in this one session. So at the end, 4 artists will be selected. 2 artists will be invited for the fall session, and then 2 artists will be invited for the spring session. So this is the segment of our information session where we get to hear from our VF alumni, Saurav Kimire. Saurav, if you want to turn your camera on. Um, Saurav, welcome to the Visiting Artist Info session, and thank you so much for being here to answer some of our questions.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks, Saurav. So Saurav just completed his Visiting Artist Fellowship at the Mittal Institute a few weeks ago. And so his experience is very fresh, and we'd love to sort of share his experience with you. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, Saurav. I know that this could, be a very long answer, but as well as you can sort of answer it, could you talk a little bit about your experience at the Visiting Artist Fellowship?
Yeah, I applied as a filmmaker uh, at the Visiting Artist Fellowship, and my core focus was how can we preserve, archive, and restore Nepalese cinematic heritages. When I was studying when I was doing my master's in Brussels, towards the end, I kind of started realizing the lack of archiving, uh, preservation of Nepalese cinematic heritages in Nepal, and I wanted to do something in that field. I wanted to contribute besides my own filmmaking practice. So when I was preparing my applications for the Visiting Artist Fellowship at Harvard, I put a lot of focus on this subject matter, and I wanted to learn uh, from the resources and the institutes at Harvard about this specific field. So uh, during my fellowship, I worked very closely with Harvard Film Archive. I built a very strong connection with the working staff there, a very practical working relationship. For example, I worked with the collections manager and learning how we can um, make databases and how archives are stored in different kinds of storages. And also, I worked with the programs manager in learning how films are programmed.
Mm-hmm.
And how they are also sourced, and also like legal copyright issues and stuff, how it's tackled. And also, I learned a lot from the projectionists at the
Mm-hmm.
Harvard Film Archive, and all the technical things, how to screen like 16 films and how to work with 35 and how to work with projectors. Um, So this has all kind of helped me to because I have this larger vision of like wanting to establish a film culture center in Nepal. So all of these people and all of these connections that I was able to build at Harvard uh, have been like very helpful and will be very helpful in the future.
Got it.
Um,
Wonderful. Well,
yeah.
it is, yeah, I mean, you accomplished so much during the Visiting Artist Fellowship. It was wonderful to watch you work. And, as you know, the Visiting Artist Fellowship is self-directed, right? So there's really, you sort of create your own schedule, and you're really great at proactively seeking out resources and asking the right questions. And so that was really wonderful. I have another question for you. What components do you think made your application a successful one? And I can speak to this too, but I would love for you to kind of share some of it as well.
Yeah, sure. Um, uh, I just I just had this idea that from the beginning that I wanted to not apply. Like I knew I was a filmmaker and I had my projects, my own individual projects, but I wanted to apply with something larger. And by larger, I mean something with which I could contribute to not just my practice, but to this community of Nepalese filmmaking or this industry as a whole. And I wanted to apply with that vision, and I found that in this idea of being able to establish a film culture center in Nepal, or this archiving institution that had never been done before, and which is also so very much important part of a film industry, because it preserves history.
Right,
It's also a memory, and it's also an identity of this whole community of this Nepalese film industry. And we never have it. There's a very big hole, or like nobody has done it. So I had that vision I had that intention from the
mm-hmm.
beginning, that I wanted to apply with something
That's unique.
that could serve a larger community. So that was one of the first thing that I built my application on. And then I was looking for a kind of like impact that I could like bring back to Nepal by learning all of these things. So I
Right,
also focused a lot on what could be the right kind of impact that could visibly be seen in the
right.
application. So that was another one of my question. And
Yeah, I
then
think one of the things was definitely impact. Um,
yeah,
I think the jury saw the impact that your research could have in a larger South Asian community. And I
yes,
think another sort of strength of your application was also your proposal, how clear it was what you wanted to do, what your research
yes,
question is, what you wanted to do,
hmm,
and how you would do it. Which,
yeah,
institutes within Harvard would you want to reach out to? The people that
mm,
were in the institutes. And again, you could find you could find information about the institutes through the Harvard website. Actually, so yeah, and could you speak about how you went about looking for these resources as someone, you know, that was not as familiar with the Harvard ecosystem?
I mean, we had a very strong, there's always a very strong introduction by the Mittal team to set you off. I think, uh, because in the first week, you get really good introduction with the Harvard community, the university, and different institutes, and that's always that was really a very good starting point. And then I started looking very specifically into what institutes, or like what faculty, or which specific departments would be really useful for me. So I kind of narrowed down on that on by the second week. So in the first week, it was much more broader, and then it became, and I knew that I knew from the beginning that my department was either the film department, the audiovisual department, or the Harvard Film Archive.
Right,
So that was already upfront. Like we had really discussed, like, okay, I need to get in touch with these people,
right. And you
and
sort of had already
then
looked up these
we started
resources,
set
right?
yes, and we
Could you
set
tell
up
us,
meetings. Yeah.
sorry to cut you off. Could you tell us, even before you got to Harvard, when you were putting together your application, could you tell us how you found these resources?
I mean, I've been looking at like different kinds of fellowships and things that I could like apply to as I grow in my field.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point I came across the Visiting Artist Fellowship at Mittal Institute, and and uh, and I knew already about the Harvard Film Archive, because I already knew at some point that I want to do something with archives, and I want to do something with preservation. And Harvard has have its own Harvard Film Archive, and its own collections. Like there is so many, like more than 35,000 films in their archives, and so I already had, even though like Mittal Institute and Harvard Film Archive, where I could not connect them before the fellowship, I knew that they existed individually inside Harvard ecosystem. So
Right,
yeah, I did have a kind of like pre-research about, like places I could go, or like, opportunities that
right,
I could apply to. And then if I get this opportunity, or if I would apply to these, and I had like, okay, I'll do this. Like I had a kind of like pointers and
right. So
stuff
you
like
had
that.
already sort
So
of looked at
yeah,
our
I was
website.
kind of, yeah,
Yeah, and I would say, to
yes.
everyone, go to the Harvard website, and 9 out of 10 times you will find what you're looking for. Saurav, I have my last question for you. For people who are thinking of applying for the Visiting Artist Fellowship, people who are here today, what tip or tips would you give them um, in terms of, getting their application together? Um, what would you um, what would you tell them?
Yeah, so it would it's also mentioned, but it's really important that you find a very strong connection between the research idea that you are proposing in your application and the institutes, or various like departments, or places that Harvard has. So if you can actually connect these two things, then it will be really clear in the application that the applicant wants to do this, and is going to use these resources and stuff. So there are a lot of libraries and a lot of museums, and like for visual artists, there is the Carpenter Center, there is the Film Archive, and so many other like endless places that you could look for. So you have to be very specific in pointing out, like, okay, this and this idea, and then I will work with these people. If you have some names, then yeah, that would also be amazing. Some names of some faculty that you would like to work with and stuff. So that is, I think that is important. Yeah. Um,
Yes, I definitely
and
agree, especially when
mm,
you said, specific institutions, information about faculty is, everything on the website. We want to basically know that you have a clear idea of how you want to do your research. Because the research, this fellowship is a self-directed fellowship. Once you're on campus for 8 weeks, the first week we will provide a structured orientation, introducing you to all the institutions that you might need to sort of jumpstart your research. But after that, It's a self-directed fellowship where you create your own schedule and you're going to go about, your research. Obviously, I will be there as the arts program manager to guide you, to check in with you every week, but it's really up to you. So we want to know that you have a plan, basically, what your research idea is, where you want to research this, who are the people that you might want to connect with. And I would say, yes, Saurav's application had all of these things very clear. Is there any other tips you'd like to share, Saurav, before I move on to audience question?
Yeah, it's really because I also faced the issue with like late submission, and it's really important. Like it's safe to prepare everything in advance in the center because you might face last minute hassle, or like sometimes the servers are down, something like that. I think that happened with my application also, but uh, things turned out, and then I had another chance to submit. But yeah, it's important to that, and then also the recommendation letters.
Yes, definitely. Recommendation letters are, we require two recommendation letters, and these are because it involves two other individuals in your application. It is your responsibility to make sure that the recommendation letters are submitted on time. Without a recommendation letter, one or two, without the application is considered incomplete, and we cannot accept incomplete applications. We also cannot accept late applications. So these are things that you can avoid from your end. We would definitely say apply early. Anything else, Saurav?
I think that's all, and best of luck. Please apply with your best intentions, with your best desires and your work, and have a very good intention to like contribute back uh, to the place from you are from, and think about the impact that you would like to create. And yeah, best of luck.
All right, thanks for being here, Saurav. I'm going to go on to audience questions, but if I see any questions that you might be able to answer better, I'm going to switch to you if that's okay. All right.
Sure.
So the first question is, how do we get to know about the collections and archives at Harvard to prepare an application around it? Is that necessary? So it's very necessary. Like we just said, it's important for you to point out which institution you'd like to work with, which faculty member, if there are classes that you're interested in, mentioning that would be great. How you can do it is, so everything is on our Harvard website. Also, a quick Google search can help too. Harvard.edu is our website for the whole university. And then the Mittal Institute website about the VF is posted on the chat as well. Someone, if you could post it again, that would be great. So, you can look through our website as well. There are also, as a helpful resource, there are also interviews from past VFs that we've posted. We've spotlighted our VF alumni. We've spoken to VFs while they're on campus to learn about their experience. So I think digging into all of this is going to really help your application. Um, Next question. As a residency is research oriented, are individuals from multidisciplinary research backgrounds encouraged to apply? Is it mandatory to have a background as a visual artist? So yes, so the Visiting Artist Fellowship is for visual artists. What the fellowship is trying to do is to encourage, opportunities for visual artists to conduct research, because there usually aren't as many academic opportunities for visual artists to conduct research on their own to further inform their artwork. So this fellowship is for visual artists. If you have a multidisciplinary background and you do something else as well, that's fine. But you do need to be a mid-career visual artist. That means, you're creating work actively, you're showing work at various venues. You've been creating work for a while, you've been recognized for your work. These things are very important. So just a reminder, if you have a question, please post it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and not on the general chat. That way we'll know it's a question. Should the question about how you use your work to draw attention to social issues in South Asian context only focus on the project research you would like to conduct at Harvard, or should it address your work in general? I think it can be both. I think what the jury wants to see is, your work, how does it relate to South Asian issues? Um, how does it relate to things that are happening in South Asia? For example, if your work is related to climate change, it's so related to South Asia and the rest of the world, and we also want to see if you have awareness of, the issues that you are trying to speak about as an artist. What is important to you, as a South Asian artist? What would you like to speak about? These are things that we'd like to know from your application. Next question. Hi, thank you, Sneha, for offering this information session. Is this fellowship also open to performance art, music, and theater-based interdisciplinary artists, or is it only for visual artists? So this is a very good question. So we have had performance artists who are also painters apply in the past. I would say that this fellowship is directed towards especially visual artists. So if you're a visual artist and do performance art, that's great, but you do need to have a visual arts element. Although I would say in the future, we are looking into the possibility of including performance art more so in the Mittal Institute. So stay tuned. I would say follow our Instagram, and also sign up for our newsletter. When you go to our Mittal Institute website, it's the first thing that sort of pops up. So if you sign up for our newsletter, you will receive a lot of our updated sort of news, and we're an expanding institute, so you'll get to know about all the opportunities that are popping up. Let's see, next question. Is there a preferred type of recommendation letter, academic versus work recommendation letters? Who can or should recommend? Hey, this is a very good question, and thank you for your question. So, from the two recommendation letters, we would say at least one of them we'd recommend is an academic recommendation letter. So, the university that you went to, someone in the field who's a leader in the field that that you've worked with. Because what we require in the recommendation letter is things like, how long have they known you? How is your work ethic? What is it about your work that they enjoy? So it needs to be someone who can speak about your work. The details of the recommendation letter is also on our Visiting Artist Fellowship webpage, that's been posted in the chat. So you can look there as well. And then in terms of who else? So academic, and then if there's another senior artist maybe who can speak about your work, that is also a great recommendation letter that you could get. Let's see, next question. Answered this question. Okay, another really good question. How do you define mid-career artist? Is it age? It is definitely not age. Mid-career means you are in the in mid-career of your entire career. So we want to see things like, are you, have you been creating art for a while? Do you have an established body of work? How strong is your artist statement? How well do you know your own work? Also, are you an active artist showing work at various institutes and galleries? How long have you been doing that for? Do you have experience, putting up shows, exhibitions, speaking about your work? And how in depth is your work? And I think that speaks to how far are you in your career? Any awards that you've received, please don't forget to mention those. So, any recognition. So these are things that we we consider as mid-career artists. So it's definitely not age. Another question, I hope that answers your question. Next question, is the spring or fall session predetermined, or can we choose which session we participate in? So that's a really good question too. So as you know, we have a spring session and a fall session. In the application, we ask you which preference you have so that we know, but we can't guarantee that you will receive the preference that you requested for. So the jury will choose which session you will be attending. So next question, and we have about 20 minutes more, so please feel free to send in more questions. Do illustrators, graphic novelists also fall under your category of visual artists? Does the applicant need to have a background in exhibiting traditional gallery spaces, or can visual artists in areas like illustration and digital art also apply? Those who may be published and awarded but not exhibited in gallery, for instance. Definitely. We would suggest illustrators and graphic novelists to apply. We want to see that, and of course, we understand that these artists, to show their work, galleries might not be the places. It might be publications, it might be renowned publications, books. So we would say, share your accomplishments as much as possible to let us know that you are mid-career, that you have been doing this, and that you understand your art, and you've shared it in various mediums. Next question, what are the visa requirements? How does the visa process work? Good question. So if you are selected as a visiting artist fellow, then you will be coming to the US as a J1 scholar. So it's called a J1 scholar visa. And what the process looks like is once you get accepted, we will send you documents that you will need to go ahead and create an appointment with the US Embassy in your home country. And then, so with the documents that we provide, you take that to the embassy, get your appointment ahead of time, and then go through the interview process. And so if you have any questions once you're selected, then our Harvard office of our Harvard International Office, the HIO, is also a very helpful resource that will direct you to, so you'll receive the support that you need to apply for the visa. Of course, we are not the US consulate, so we cannot decide if you receive the visa or not, but Harvard University will help you with the documents required to put together your application. Okay, next question. What happens at the interview level? Because sometimes an artist can be more articulate through their visuals rather than verbally. Note, maybe ask Saurav to speak of this. Great. Okay, so I'm going to start this off and then pass this off to Saurav. What happens at the interview level? Sometimes an artist is more articulate through their visuals rather than verbally. So in the interview level, we do ask you some questions, and we do want to know that you can communicate about your work efficiently, because you will have a public talk when you're at Harvard University here during your visiting artist fellowship, right? So we want you to be able to speak about your work. We want you to be able to speak to faculty members and present your work. So some sort of efficiency in visual communication is something that we're looking at. Saurav, do you want to speak about what happens at the interview levels? Maybe not the specific questions, but what generally you were asked and what your experience was.
I think it was a bit of like expanding on the application and some elements of it, and particularly a kind of like a little bit of testing whether the applicant really knows what he's speaking about, or just a little bit of background check if the person actually comes from, or like, you can really see or feel by the how the person talks, if he really knows or she really knows about what they are talking, right, what they wrote about in the application and stuff. So I think it was a kind of like double check. And I felt something like that, and like it's very simple questions. If you are really practicing, and if you have really done the research, and if you are really honest about what you are proposing in the application, then it won't be a problem. Like, you can easily speak and then explain
Great.
about.
Thanks,
So it's
sir.
just simple questions, for 3 or 4 questions, I think. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So the questions are all based on your application. So there is no wrong answer that you would answer in the interview question. We just want to know that you know your work. And if you wrote your application, then you definitely know the answer to the questions. And so it's just, questions that you already know answers of. We'll ask you to speak about your work, maybe the proposal. So basically what the application asks are questions that, we'll be asking you in the interview. All right, next question. What is the deadline for the recommendation letter to be submitted? Is it the same as the application deadline? Okay, so good question. So January 15th is the deadline for the recommendation letters to be submitted. So your deadline as the applicant is January 2nd, and we're providing a couple of more weeks for your recommendation letters to come in. So January 15th. And that's the absolute deadline. So we will need recommendation letters to come in by then. Okay, next question. And this might be the last question if more questions don't come in. Does the selected candidate produce new work at Harvard during the stay, for example, to present at the public talk, or do they present existing work? Okay, this is a very good question, and there's usually a confusion in the application process, in the proposals regarding this. So let me clarify what this is. So in the Visiting Artist Fellowship, there is no expectation of the fellow creating new work at the fellowship. In fact, we would recommend you not create work and focus on your research. Like I said, this is a different this is not a typical artist residency. This is a research-based residency. So what you will be exhibiting is the work that you have done in the past, and what you will be speaking about is the work that you have done so far, like in the past, and what you hope to research at Harvard. That is what your public talk is going to be about. So please do not think that, within 8 weeks, there is an expectation of you creating new work. It's sort of a new, no strings attached um, fellowship for you to sort of research the things that you would like to once you get on campus. No new work, there's no expectation of creating new work during the fellowship. Thank you for that question. So even in your application, in your proposal, you do not need to specify that you will create new work during your time, because that's not what the fellowship is about, right? It's a research-based fellowship. So we'd like for you to tell us what is your research interest? What would help you further inform your artwork? What would help you explore those South Asian issues that you are already grappling with? And how you would use use the Harvard resources during your time here. So please do not send a plan of the new work that you will be expected to create, which is what our usual artist residency might request of you. Okay, we have 15 more minutes. We have 2 more questions. If you have more questions, please send them on your way so I know that I can make time for it. Should our proposals be more open-ended, or propose a specific project that will be executed based on our research? So good question. So no is the answer, in terms of we do not require for you to have a motive for why you want to it doesn't need to be a project that you need to execute later after the research that you do here. We just want to know that the research that you conduct at Harvard is going to help you further inform your artwork. You do not need to promise us that you will create a body of work or execute a project or something like that. It's no strings attached. But we do want to know how this will help you. How will, so for example, for Saurav, we wanted to know how, researching at the Harvard film archive and learning more about running a film archive will help his work. And it was clear in his proposal. So think of a research topic that you've been thinking of, questions that you might have. And then we want to know how this will help you. You do not need to, again, provide a project that you will do in the future based on that. If you have, great, but it's not a requirement. We just need to know that this research will help you further inform your artwork. Next question. Can artist duos apply together as a joint application? So we've received this question before. We would say the resources that we have is only for one artist to, be able for us to be able to pay the stipend and the ticket, the round trip economy ticket and all of that. We'd say go ahead and apply. I think it might be up to the jury since we haven't come across something like this. So it could be considered, but I don't want to promise that it will be. So I would say, for best chances, why don't you go ahead and apply? Next questions. So we have about 12 more minutes. We have 2 more questions. Do we need to hold master's degree or need to be a performing artist, or we can apply if we have learned a dance form, Indian classical dance? Okay, so it seems like the question is asking one, if you need a master's degree to apply. You do not need a master's degree to apply. We do want to see that, if you've attended an art university of some sort, do let us know, but it's not a requirement that you have attended, a master's degree. The next question is, can we apply as a performing artist? So it seems dance. So performance art, so like dance isn't, so in our visiting artist fellowship, we are sticking to visual arts. So painting, sculpture, film, digital art, illustrations are the art forms that we accept. Next question. Okay, we have 10 minutes and lots of questions coming in. All right, let's go through these. If I had applied earlier but was not selected, can I apply again? Do I need recommendation letters again? So this question is very relevant for people who have applied and did not get selected but would like to apply again. I want to start off by saying that if you've applied before, please apply again. We have had visiting artist fellowships who applied multiple years and then finally got selected. And we would say that, if you are applying again, yes, you do need to submit another recommendation letter and a whole new application. If it has been 1 year or 2 years since your last application, we want to know, how is your work changed? Are there new works there? So please do not submit the same exact application because as this fellowship is for mid-career artists who are actively working. So we want to see that, there's been some changes in your interest in your work. Your work doesn't need to change, but maybe you've created new work. If you've not created new work in 2 years, maybe you need to be more active in your work, right? So we would say definitely apply again, but we need a brand new application from you. Hopefully you have new things you want to update us on. And maybe your research topic has changed, so definitely don't rely on your old application. Okay, a few more questions to go. Are we supposed to reach out to professors as well before applying? to share our art practice if they're interested, to guide us. Should I mention the professor's name or simply refer to the Harvard faculty in my application? Okay, so this is a great question. The question is asking if you need to get in touch with Harvard faculty ahead of your application. You do not. Um, Actually, we would say do not reach out to Harvard faculty. We just want to know that you know which faculty you would like to, maybe ask some questions or work with. We want to know that you've done your research in, knowing what questions you would like to ask and what your research is about. So please do not email Harvard faculty. That is something that once you get selected and you're on campus, that is something that we help you with. But please do not email Harvard faculty before you get selected as a visiting artist fellow. If you have further questions regarding that, you can email me as well. In fact, sorry, I forgot to change the slide. Here's my email address. In case in the next 8 minutes I don't get to your questions, please feel free to email me with your questions. And also don't forget that our website, the Mittal Institute website, Salman, if you could post it again in the chat, if it's not there. Please look through our website. Please read previous Visiting Artist Fellowship interviews to learn more about or get a better sense of what they did during their time, and also learn more about the Institute and how we function. Okay. So we have 3 or 4 more questions and about 6 minutes left. Let's see if I can get through these. Does the Institute assist successful applicants with finding a place to stay in Cambridge prior to arriving there, or is this the artist's responsibility? Okay, great question. So this is the artist's responsibility. Housing is the artist's responsibility. What we will do is we will have a Zoom session. Once you get selected, we will have a Zoom session to walk you through what to expect in the program. And in that, we'll also put you in touch with previous visiting artist fellows so that you can ask them regarding how they applied for housing and looked for housing. And in the past, it has been super helpful to talk to previous visiting artist fellows. Okay. What can be illustrated as the main objectives of this fellowship? What should one expect to leave with when they complete the fellowship? Okay, so the objective of the fellowship is to provide resources for artists living and working in South Asia, an opportunity for these artists to research using Harvard resources to further inform their artwork. Because um, again, I'm going to take Saurav as an example. Saurav is a filmmaker. He's very interested in learning how film preservation or the culture of film preservation and film culture works. How do you harbor that? How do you introduce that to a city? How do you create a film archive? Like these are questions that Saurav was really interested in. And, this fellowship did exactly that in answering his questions, or at least beginning to answer his questions. It might be something that he would not have had the opportunity to do somewhere else at an artist residency, at a usual artist residency. So the objective of the fellowship is to provide research resources for artists living and working in South Asia. What should one expect to leave with when they complete the fellowship? I would say, the hopefully answers to your questions in terms of the research questions that you have. A larger network of past BF artists and, your Harvard network will also be super useful by the end of your fellowship. I think so. I can't expand too much on this question in terms of what to expect to leave with. I would say maybe ask previous visiting artist fellows Saurav, if you don't mind sharing your email address so that people can ask you specific questions as well. If you can put that in the chat for everyone to see if you feel comfortable, that would be great. So we have 4 more minutes and more questions coming in. All right, can a recommendation letter be written by a practicing artist who has previously been a fellow? Sure, yes. Another question. If we are visual artists as well as educators at a school or university, can we talk about how the research will be helping our teaching? Will help our teaching. So we want to know how the research is going to help your art practice. Because you know we are aware that a lot of visual artists also teach, also might have another job that they're doing to support themselves, and that is fine. But we want to know how the research that you do or are proposing to do at Harvard will further inform your artwork. So that is the main thing that we want to see. Okay, last question. Okay, what entails being recognized for your work? Awards, articles. Sure, we want to see in your resume if you've been recognized by various awards. Maybe not articles, but you can mention in your resume that you've been mentioned in, say, the New York Times or Vogue or something, right? Um, and yeah, anything else that you might be recognized for in terms of awards or um, yeah, or a certification for something, you know, that is all going to go in your resume. Thanks, Sarv, for posting your email address. Thanks for being so open. So we are at the last 2 minutes of our information session. Thank you so much for your wonderful questions. In case we haven't gotten to your question, please email me. My email address is on the screen right now. We would also recommend you go through our Mittal Institute website. We can't stress enough that our website has so much information on the Visiting Artist Fellowship. It tells you how to apply. The application link is there as well. We would say begin that process as soon as possible. We had about 90 people here today, almost 100. We would love to see 100 and more, you know, applications. So if everybody begins your process, if you began your process now, you're more likely to complete it by January 2nd. It's not a short application. There are only a few questions, but the questions take time to think about. You know, so I would say begin your application as soon as possible if this fellowship feels like something that you could benefit from. And I would say you know, that all of our visiting artists in the past have benefited tremendously in their artwork and for the future of their artwork and their career as well. So if you're a mid-career artist living and working in South Asia, please apply to this fellowship. And thank you so much for your questions. And yeah, thank you for your time as well. And we look forward to receiving your applications. Saurav, thank you so much for being here and for your time as well. All right.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
everybody. Thank you.